This podcast is brought to you by PwC.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Family Office Insights. Today I'm joined by a fellow partner here at PwC Switzerland, Joop, who is an expert advising on all aspects of workforce. So Joop, over to you. First question, can you tell us about the kind of clients you're advising and hot topics that you're seeing with these clients at the moment?
Hi Lisa, thank you for having me on your show today.
Thank you.
Basically, we are advising all sorts of clients, not particularly and only family offices, but clients of all sorts of sizes and in all sorts of industries on the topic of workforce. And most, if not all, companies have a workforce in some shape or form. And often that's actually one of the biggest investments and costs, and also one of the biggest assets. So we basically help clients from creating, shaping an employee value proposition. How do you become attractive? How do you actually make sure you retain staff, you develop staff, you make sure you get the best out of it. The way we do that is through a whole range of different types of interventions. A lot of it is indeed focused on this employer value proposition, and that starts with what do you as an employer requests from your people, but also what do you give in return. The kind of obvious element you give in return is reward, base pay, bonuses, and of course people want that they have a level of pay that is sufficient, first of all, to actually get around, but also fair. It has to be fair, and that notion of pay fairness is something we see increasingly being of importance, both from a motivational perspective, also from a regulatory legislative perspective. There's more and more kind of reporting requirements that companies need to comply with, and it becomes more and more a topic. So that's actually one of the things that is quite on the forefront of where we help companies with.
Yeah. And if we think about family offices particularly, across the sector, there's a huge variation in what we see. So we see very small private offices with maybe 2, 3, 5 people working there, all the way through to very well-established organisations with maybe hundreds of people working there. So I think this topic kind of varies depending the size, the maturity of the family office and the location in which they operate. But if we think about a new family office that's being set up, what are the kind of key guiding principles from a workforce perspective that you would be advising the family to think about?
I think, size definitely matters if it comes to your employer value proposition. I briefly spoke about pay, but, if you ask people what do they really care about if it comes to employment, then a lot of it is about development. What's my perspective in the future? And of course, if you have the larger the organization, the more horizontal opportunities you can offer as an organization. So if you're a smaller organization, you will need to, you're basically competing, with organizations that have more career perspectives to offer. And if you don't have that kind of vertical growth to offer, you need to think about how do you actually create an environment where people want to work. What's much more prominent in small organizations in general is, of course, the interpersonal relationships and the importance of interpersonal relationships. So the culture. Since a long time, when we started to investigate, why do people actually leave their employers? The single most given answer is always their direct superior, their boss.
Yeah.
So that whole notion of culture and creating a culture where people feel at home, where people feel that the place where they work is the place where they belong, is probably the most important element. And so next to pay, it's really about making sure that people feel that the place they work is the place where they want to work.
That's really interesting. And I think for family offices as well, there's often an additional challenge of the family want to work with people that they know and they trust and have done for a long time. There often aren't that many places available. There isn't necessarily that horizontal progression. So I think that feeling of being part of the family is a really important element, but obviously balancing it then with still being able to perform the job that you're there to do, and not just being the hired help, but being hired to help, and keeping that distance when you need to. If we turn then specifically to remuneration, though, we're seeing more and more with family offices, not just the consideration of salary and bonus, but also bringing in different ways to be rewarded. So looking at particular KPIs and then matching remuneration to that. So similar to hedge funds or private equity, bringing in carry and that type of thing. Do you see that often with smaller organisations, or is that really something that's unique to family offices?
I think there's a couple of elements to that level of variable pay that one needs to consider whether you want to install this or not. First of all, the variable pay, specifically if it's linked to shares, the first notion is probably to be a co-owner of the organization. In a family office, in a small structure, that may actually be the most important motivator. Another element is this element of performance. If you give variable pay related to performance, to which extent does the individual actually really have an impact on that? And can the individual really influence performance? And how relatable is it? How fair is it to actually have a piece of pay being related to performance if the person doesn't really influence that level of performance? And I think there's also something about the retention element. There is definitely a mental discount if you defer pay. So if you say, you get 20,000 today or 50,000 in 3 years, then research shows actually a lot of people prefer 20,000 today.
Yeah,
so the time value for money is actually depreciating the deferral quite quickly.
Yeah.
So you need to really think carefully, I think, about crafting variable pay. How do you craft it? How do you make it actually relatable? How do you keep it simple? You can come up with all sorts of complex scorecards that people in the end do not really understand anymore, and there will be even more mental depreciation of variable pay. So yes, we see a lot of variable pay, specifically in organizations that are a bit less cash rich. So startup organizations, you start with a relatively how do you say that, modest base pay, but then you give a lot of promises in the future if the organization kind of develops and delivers upon its promise, and we will all benefit from it. Okay, that there is definitely makes sense to have that, but then again, it's all about the devil is in the detail. How do you design? How do you communicate? How do you operate? Maintaining and administrating variable pay plans are often also complex. So there's also something about that. Your small organizations, they do not want to get distracted by heavy administrative burden, all sorts of reporting towards authorities, etc. So there's a lot of different elements in why you would or would not get into these more complex deferrals. I don't say that organizations shouldn't be doing it, but if you do it, then you do it properly, I would say.
Yeah, and if you are looking at that kind of route, how often are you reviewing it? Is it an annual thing? Is it every 3 years, every 5 years when the staff leave? How do you judge that?
I think it's definitely something to review every 2 or 3 years. Specifically because smaller organizations, the population is so obviously there. You need to keep the human factor in mind, and you can design your plan, but if it doesn't serve the purpose, then please step away from that, I would say.
Yeah. So a lot of the families we work with do quite a lot of work themselves, thinking about their values, their purpose, the purpose of their wealth, the legacy that they want to leave. And we see that starting to influence then how they think about the family office and how that should run. Do you see this kind of approach impacting other organisations and how they think about their people strategy?
Well, if organizations think about their people strategy, I think you need to take in mind the most kind of the recent developments. Sticking with pay, and then I'd like to move away a bit from that, but sticking with pay, Western world really got hit by inflation the last 24 months or so. And nowadays, if a country has 6% inflation, we kind of, tell each other that inflation is over, but people should not forget that that's an inflation cumulative on the, in the UK it was like close to 20%, I think, or in the Netherlands as well. And then you add 20% year 1 and 10% year 2 and 6% year 3, you're at 36% higher cost of living than 24 months ago. And also in Switzerland, although we are a little bit less hit by inflation, still the cost of living is a real concern. And we recently did a survey, an employee survey, well, globally actually, but also in Switzerland. And 58% of Swiss respondents, they said that they are struggling financially to actually make ends meet.
Wow, really?
23% of workers has taken on an extra job to basically simply get around. And if you think about that, then I think, the cost of living is a real concern. So making sure that people can actually earn wages sufficiently to make ends meet, and making sure that pay is fair, I would say, in terms of your pay strategy, should be at the forefront. Now, in terms of people strategy, it's not just pay, right? A lot of organizations and a lot of workers are kind of are still getting to grips with the hybrid working model. I saw a study over the weekend which stated that in office workers nowadays, the last 10-12 months, it hasn't really changed, and the kind of modus operandi seems to be 60% in the office, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and then 40% at home. Apparently that's then becoming the new normal, but still, what does that mean, for people that work, that are more at home? How do you make sure they stay engaged? How do you make sure that everybody stays on board? I think that's still kind of an important part of a people strategy. Of course, artificial intelligence has entered all of a sudden our workplace. How do you deal with that? I just started to explore the co-pilot. I guess you're also part of the pilot group. I mean, it's amazing what that's going to do with our work, and those kind of elements, the uncertainty, the disruption, and that's not over, right? It's not like, okay, now we have hybrid working, now we have AI, now we know what's going to change. I mean, if we're going to have a conversation in 6 months, there's another big thing probably that pops up, right? So that continuous change, that continuous uncertainty, that is definitely something that, that as in terms of your people strategy, that organizations are trying to get to grips with.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard actually for a lot of our clients to stay on top of all of those issues, because there's everything else going on all of the time anyway. Yeah,
it's on top of actually running the business, right?
Yeah.
You need to actually, find your clients, take care of your investments, run the business, and then on top of all of this, you have these uncertainties continuously popping up. So I think that's the constant change, and it's a bit of a cheesy cliche. Sorry for it, but it's probably more prevalent than ever.
Yeah. So I think we're coming to the end of our time, but maybe one last question from me. At PwC in Switzerland, I think we're quite lucky. We work in quite a diverse workforce. Not perfect, but pretty diverse. I mean, we're both sat here as non-Swiss, as partners in the Swiss firm. When we look at the stats for family offices, the diversity does vary hugely depending which region you're in, but typically is lagging behind even the banking sector. How quickly or how easily is that going to change? And are there things that employers, other than simply only trying to hire more diverse staff, that should be thinking about or doing or trending 5 years into the future? What are the issues that the family offices should be thinking about?
Well, I think diversity is not an objective in itself. Diversity is one of the means that can help you to actually become a better, stronger company, more innovative, more creative. It gives you more access to talent, and the talent scarcity is also all around us. So diversity to me is really an answer to a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But diversity doesn't work without inclusion, without this culture of belonging. So I think that also traditional organizations, family offices, need to think about how do you ensure that the place where people work, they feel that that's the place where they belong. And I think that's the biggest challenge. How do you make sure that you actually, for me, the key word of that is actually empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Try to put yourself in the other one's shoes. Try to genuinely understand where other people are coming from, what drives them, what motivates them. Listen to each other. It's not more difficult than that, actually.
Well, I think you did a very nice job of bringing it full circle and saying belonging is really the key, and that feeling of being part of something. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.